This is Nivea, and you know I got songs.
We just want to start the interview. We want to start, with your beginnings in music. Can you kind of tell us, how did you originally, get discovered and signed at Jive?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, I kind of made the decision to become a singer at the age of 15. And that was at that beginning of the high school years. I pretty much did studio in high school for 4 years, so it was my mission to shop my demo for a record deal right after high school, and I did it when I graduated. I went to New York, and it happened. They liked my music, and they offered us the deal, and we signed.
Okay.
I was 18. I just graduated from high school a few months prior, so it was a cool time.
Cool. So, after you got signed, you started working on your debut album. Take me back to that album and what you remember about recording that album and the process of putting it together.
Yeah, it was very interesting because a lot of my first album was actually a part of my demo that we actually brought to the record label. Like a lot of times you'll get to a label. Well, back in those times, I won't say that now, but back then you would get a record deal and they would, say they have these producers and these writers that they want you to get your records from. Whereas in my case, I kind of came with mine. Don't Mess With the Radio. My first single was on my demo. Don't Mess With My Man was on my demo. No Doubt was on my demo. Have Mercy was on my demo. I'm trying to remember, but that's just to give you some examples of how I was more than prepared. And at the same time, even though I came with a lot of records, I had the chance to work with the Neptunes on my first record, which those songs were actually released in Japan and not in America. I did a double first album. I released in Japan and one in the States. So it was an interesting thing that I came with half my album and then at the same time had the opportunity to work with such incredible people to mash with my new sound and introduce Nivea for the first time.
And of course, from your debut, you have the huge single, Don't Mess With My Man. And, like we mentioned, or like you mentioned, that was part of your demo, and I think it had a different production than the one we heard on the radio. So how come you guys decided to switch up the beat?
Okay, well, that was produced by Brian Michael Cox. I actually recorded Don't Mess With My Man when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
So at the time I did the video and the release, I was 19, and we thought the beat, we did not like both versions actually, but Brian wanted to change up the beat, and so he did another beat to it, and that was that. I also did some remixes. Oh, no, that was Don't Mess With the Radio, my bad. These two Don't Messes, I get confused sometimes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the other big single that you had was Laundromat with R. Kelly, and, you've always had a nice working relationship with R. Kelly, so what was the chemistry like with you guys, and, what was it like working with him on those records?
It was easy because once he heard a few of my records and he heard my voice and my tone, he said it was very familiar to him, and he just would write, and I would do what he said. Whatever he come up with, I would sing it just as, and he knew what to do with my voice, so I would just follow his lead. It was always easy, and the sessions weren't long, so yeah, it was cool.
Cool. And then one of our personal favorites on the album, the one that you mentioned, produced by the Neptunes, take us back to that song and what you remember about it.
Okay, which, you mean Runaway? We did too.
Yeah, Runaway, yeah.
Independence Day, we got Runaway. It was interesting because I had been privy to hear their very first debut at the time, and so I was like, oh wow, and then they had done Khalees stuff, and I was already a fan. I'm like, oh, this is great. I got to meet them because at the time, Mystical and I were label mates, and the Neptunes had just recently done Shake It Fast and Danger, which I featured on Mystical Danger, and so thank God I had the opportunity to work with them on my record as well. So working with them was fun. It was awesome to see how they create and in that vibey space and how it just comes to them. And I just went in there and did what Pharrell said, and that's what it was. They're just dope.
Can you talk about, you mentioned Danger, the song with Mystical. A lot of people heard you on that song for the first time as an artist. What type of an introduction do you feel like that was for you as an artist?
I mean, I like it, but at the same time, it kind of confused a lot of people. I was in a video or whatever, but not in my school, I guess you could say, Nivea image, per se.
Right.
And so, when I first came out with Don't Mess With The Radio, in my video, I got the colored hair, which was always my thing since high school. People were like, what? That's weird. And they didn't even think that was the same girl. I would get, you the Danger girl? And that's Nivea? That's the same girl? Like, people weren't even tying the two together. So it was almost like a misfire, I guess, when my image, I was accepted more in the pop community and culture first, even though I'm a hip-hop artist, R&B, but they were like, oh, that's different. And even Mystical is a hip-hop hardcore rapper. I was perceived when I came out as a solo artist, unattached from Danger. I was some other girl, like, people didn't even, it was almost kind of hard to integrate at first. I didn't know where I belonged yet, where people perceive me, that it's in a process.
Yeah.
You know what your thing is with the people and how they perceive you and what your image really is. So, because I don't really follow anything, I just am. And, that's always been a challenge for me.
Yeah. So, moving forward, you had the second album, and of course you had the Little John record on there, Okay. So, what was the expectation from you for that record and, I guess, the album as well?
Well, yet again, Okay kind of came out of nowhere. I don't want to really say it played into any sort of storyline. I think Complicated was just a mixture of me, like, going through a different set of personalities. Like, I was a party girl. I wanted to be something about love. It was like all over the place, and that's kind of like where I was in my life. It was a transition going on, and then I was falling in love again. Like, it was a lot happening. So Complicated has a lot going on in it. It's like complicated. But Okay, I thought it was fun and bouncy and happy. So, yeah, we did that. The Dream wrote that, and so I was happy to have it.
Yeah. And then it seemed right after that single, there wasn't really a push for the album anymore. I don't really think we had a second single from that album.
No, we didn't. That was when the defect was occurring with the CDs, and they did the recall. And I was like, I'm ready, please release me. And it happened. And so, yeah, that was the end of the director's relationship.
Looking back at that situation, do you regret asking for a release, or do you think everything worked?
No, not at all. Did not regret it, no.
Okay. And then moving forward with that, you had the Animalistic album, which I think that was a very interesting album from a production standpoint. So what was the approach with that album?
Well, we, at the time I was married to The Dream, and he and I started our own company, Spark One Entertainment. And we did a distribution deal with Formula One Records over in Japan. And so we basically did that ourselves. He did pretty much all of the production himself. And we wrote and recorded those songs together. So it was just like a match of he and I alter, I guess, egos. And we just had fun with it. We was like, let's just do some other stuff. And so, he was at the height of his creative phase. It's not of like the best quality, but if you really delve into the lyrics and the melodies that we were creating, it was pretty dope. So that was that, and it was only released to certain areas. It wasn't a state, but you can get on Amazon now, I believe. So that was that. I just had my Put Boys, and that was 2006. And, yeah.
And it seems like with that album, especially on the internet, there's a lot of people who are fans of that album. Do you feel like that album was sort of ahead of its time as far as the sound?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm hearing it now, like within the past year. I've just started to hear it. Like, that's what that people really paid attention. I'm like, wow. Like, that wasn't even, no one was in that zone back in 2006, 8 years ago. Nobody was in that zone. So I don't think that's being too arrogant to say, but I definitely think it was.
Yeah. And did you guys have any time?
Like I would have it anyway, but yeah.
Let me ask you then, we discussed it being so ahead of its time, and we definitely agree with you there. How was it received over in Japan at the time?
It did well, actually. It did. It sold in, I'm trying to remember the regions that it was selling in, but I believe Australia, and I don't remember, but yeah, it did pretty well.
Cool. So,